Hello. Good evening. I am super peaceful right now. Just took some deep breaths and I'm just thrilled to be here and sharing. I am going to talk tonight with a very dear friend. His name is Sovereign, and I became acquainted with his work a few years ago, actually. And more recently, we've been talking every week, and we decided to come on here and have one of our amazing conversations live. So, Sovereign, you want to come and join me?
Yay.
Hi. I
Hey,
said good
Melissa.
evening, but it's good morning for you.
It is. So great.
And what's so awesome is we have a little Balinese soundtrack tonight.
Yes, we do. I'm coming in from Bali. For those that don't know where I am, that's where I've been residing the last 3 years. And it's a beautiful place to really hone in on my craft. Yeah.
So beautiful. Well, I feel the vibe, and I'm in the tropics as well, but I don't have the music, so I'm thankful that you do. So we're going to chat tonight about what's become my favorite topic. I feel like I say it all the time, and for those who are following me on Facebook or Instagram, I say the word, and it's on the bottom of the screen, Syntropy, the beautiful word, and I actually learned it for the first time from listening to some recordings by you. And I wanted to just kind of frame what I would love to talk about tonight, because I plan for this to be the first of many conversations. And then, sometimes just musings on my own about stories and how Centropy has shifted how I look at almost everything in my life. Not even as an outside entity, but more as a lens. So I would love to invite you to share about it in a little bit, but we're going to go about, I'm hoping for about 30 minutes, because I'm a mom and I know this time of the evening, and it's hard to carve out time to listen to these things. But I really, what I'm saying is was transformational for me. And I'm sharing it because even if it's in bite-sized pieces, 20 or 30 minutes, I feel that these small shifts in a way of thinking is really how I made a giant transformation in my life. So yeah, I want to chat with you for about 30 minutes. And I wanted to start by talking a little bit about the idea of stories. Does that sound good? Cool. So I've been on this journey, and I've been reconsidering everything, like everything that I once believed, the things that I've been told, and even the things that I personally observe. And it's been really magical and sometimes frightening. But what I realized is that everything is a story. Even things I personally witness are filtered through belief systems that I was either, were told to me, and then I, repeated as just thoughts that really got kind of baked in, and then carved out the landscape of my lens and how I viewed what happens to me or what I hear or what I witness. And a lot of things that I've been told, and a lot of these beliefs I didn't actually witness. They were just stories from, history, from school, from, you know, teachers, from government, from parents, from elders. So this idea of story, once I really started contemplating it, I I took a step, and it was a really important step, and I learned how to back away and detach myself from everything that I once believed and that I even take in. And what was so amazing in this simple exercise is that I felt free. I felt free to learn new things. I had really come from a consciousness where I was cautioned about learn what I would investigate, what was safe to investigate, and I was really fearful personally of looking silly or being considered out there or crazy, or a laughing stock, especially coming from a science background. I come from a health science background, and my master's degree is in public health. So it's like a research heavy world, and it's all about reputation. And if you kind of get entangled in some quackery, something that science doesn't support, well, it's really hard to shake that. So I really shied away from exploring a lot of different avenues in health in my life, because I just didn't want to look like, a quack. So when I learned how to detach from stories, and when I decided to practice detaching from story, it was just so amazing, because I realized that there were a lot of stories that did not line up when I really examined them. And then there were these new ones that I would never have evaluated that really felt good to me. Not even from a place of knowing or proof or evidence, but just like authentically felt good to me. So, and when I started looking at my life as a story playing out, and I realized that the experience of it, even though I had achieved much of what I had dreamed and designed, it didn't feel good. And I started to actually contemplate rewriting it. So that was my process. And one of the awarenesses that I've come to is that no knowledge that I have do I relate to as absolute truth. The whole concept of truth, I kind of shy away from. I would rather look at everything as perspective. And for me, my exercise now is practicing connecting with an inner wisdom. And wisdom is different than knowledge to me, because it comes from a place of feeling rather than, collecting and accumulating from outside of me. So this is 180 degrees from where I started. And I would love to just, before I go in a little further into how we met, do you have any thoughts on that, about stories?
Oh, yes. I have shared so much in common with you, and the fears that arose for me as I started reevaluating everything, reality at large, and finding for myself eventually, because I had to kind of brave myself through this, the rejection of others because my beliefs weren't the same as theirs, and so forth and so forth. In the end, I found my access to Syntropy, and that's been a beautiful way to disarm myself. And I'm having some loud background noise here,
You're being
obviously.
protected right now by the motorcycle driver.
Yeah, it
Censorship.
sounds very very intense. You don't want me to express myself here. Um, yeah, no, it's been really quite beautiful to initially feel the fear of having my own opinion that wasn't fitting in with the mainstream, to then come to a place of reassurance that for me to find my own truth, as I called it at the time, it was all about tapping into my inner knowing and letting go of everything that I was told. And so there was a beautiful little kind of bridging period in there that created a gap for me. And that gap then got filled with Centropia Agroforestry, which then all of a sudden just, I see it as a springboard in what it did. It really propelled me forward with so much more, not confidence, but peacefulness and a sense of I get to explore life and reality on my own terms through my own open curiosity and my own scientific inquiry, if I want to call it that, because that is really the true way to access what life in and of itself is really doing. Because I've been believing a lot of things about what life is all doing and isn't doing, and what reality is like and what reality isn't like, and what's good and what's bad, and who's this and who's that. And all of those things, as you pointed out, are stories. So yeah, I'm sharing so much in commonality with you. It's just so beautiful.
I love it. We're vibing. All right, well, let me tell the story about how I found you, or how we met. So so in February of 2020, I had a flu, and it was a bad flu. And it was really painful, forced me to lay down and rest. And I'm a homeopath now. That's my career, and I help people with a natural medicine called homeopathy. And And I use it for everything. I use it for every type of suffering in my life, for my kids, my family, and then I support others with it. And this time was no different. So I got sick and I had my kit of remedies. And usually when I'm sick and have an opportunity to lay down, it's like a rare opportunity for me to binge watch TV. But this time I was really having a tough time. And the typical remedies that I was turning to were not helping to relieve my suffering. So instead of binge watching TV, I went to my homeopathy texts. And I actually had purchased a book that I actually have with me. And I hadn't read it yet, but it was called the Homeopathic Treatment of Influenza. I don't know if you can see that. And it's about surviving influenza epidemics and pandemics past, present, and future with homeopathy. And it's amazing. It's almost like this history text full of stories, but it's got a lot of really beautiful tellings of pandemics, epidemics over the past 200 years, where homeopathy played a really heroic role, and homeopaths, really made an enormous impact, especially here in the U.S. And the main story, which was so interesting, was the Spanish flu of 1918. And I had already really learned about that extensively in my master's degree during my 15 years ago. But that was like the foundation of the U.S. Public Health Service came right after that, and it was just a great book, and it introduced me to a whole new set of remedies, some that I knew of, but that I was using in a different context. And long story short, I learned. And I used the remedies, and I was so grateful for homeopathy, and I felt better within a few days. But what was so interesting was I felt this gratitude for this illness and the way that I related to illness in general, because I used to really try to avoid getting sick. That was everything to me. And I was before I became a homeopath, I was a health coach and I was a personal trainer. My husband and I had this healthy lifestyle studio called Fitness Redefined. And my whole life was designed around making people healthier, building immunity, which meant avoiding sickness, not getting sick as often. And, when I came across homeopathy, it was such a different perspective for me, because as I learned it, there was a different relationship with illness, and there's this kind of almost appreciation for what it has to offer you. And you really look at illness differently, according to the perspective, at least that I learned in my training. So what was so great is I didn't spend all that time being sick and judging, the illness, and really getting sucked into what actually was a huge story that was spreading around the world at the time, that I almost didn't even know about, because I just make it a point not to watch news. That's not where I get my information from. So I was a little late to the game with this big story going on. And I don't really want to, I don't plan for us to ever get entangled in that. I don't want to get into the big 2020 story that is still raging today. But I do want to share something super important that kind of happened on the other side of this illness. So after I got better, I felt like I was looking at my life with fresh eyes. Like I had this awareness that my life was filled with way too much distraction. And I just was caught in this, like the typical rat race of stress. And I prayed for a pause button. And I remember after I did this, it was 2 weeks later, I got my prayers were answered, and schools closed. Our family business was forced to close, and life as I knew it just came to a halt. So this was simultaneously the best thing ever. It was so peaceful and so lovely, because my whole family was home, and but then it was also frightening. And it was mostly frightening not because my business was closed. Like that was, kind of a concern, but it wasn't really so on my radar. What was really frightening to me was that I saw something so different than it seemed like everybody else saw. And I had already, for several years before this, been contemplating and reconsidering the story that I had been taught about illness, how it spreads. So what I saw was so different. And even like the experts, the teachers in my life, and the people who I thought were these radical health thinkers, they all seemed to be kind of going with this prevailing story. And I felt really lost and alone. And even my husband, who is the most amazing supporter, he's so used to me being this like health rebel renegade, like, kind of blazing a weird trail. He thought I was even too out there. So, and what was really interesting was I wasn't on a side. Like I wasn't pro or against, and I wasn't a believer or a denier. I just saw something completely different. And when I really just wanted to connect. I was like, there must be other people who are on some level, in my shoes. And I started searching, and I found some others, and you were among them. And I listened to your recordings about Syntropy. You have this beautiful course in Syntropy, and I'm going to ask you in a minute. It's so beautiful, the title, because it says it's a course in miracles, and you cross that out. Which I don't know if anyone who's listening to this is familiar with the Course in Miracles, which we'll maybe go into at some point. But you called it a course in Syntropy, and I listened to all your musings. I think I would go on runs, and I would just it was like my time to just listen to your poetry, and it was just so beautiful because it wasn't even like I didn't even get caught up in my mind. It just like it felt like it helped. It like made my heart sing. Like my cells were just like, yes, this is so beautiful. What is this thing? Syntropy? What is this? I need to know more about this. And it's funny because if you Google it, you can't really find out what it is. It's more than what the definitions, if you can find any, say. Like I actually think it's funny because when I type it into my phone, it like auto corrects because I don't even think the word exists. And my dad actually was so cute earlier. He called me and he said, he's like, Marissa, I've been meaning to, and I looked up Syntropy, and there are some definitions that might confuse people. So you really want to clarify what it is. So anyway, that's what I would love to do. So this is the story of how I found you. And then I took your course on Centropic Agroforestry, which is just amazing. You were one of the main inspirations for Soul to Soil, my education program that we'll talk about down the road. But in this conversation, I just wanted to ask you, what is Syntropy? Is it a perspective? Is it a truth? Is it a how-to? Is it a just another story? Because just to share a little bit about how I see it, for me, it's like a filter, like on your Instagram stories, where you put it on, or you put the glasses on, and what you see is so much more beautiful, has so much more potential. It's in harmony, but it doesn't shield you from seeing what isn't working. It doesn't just magically erase what's broken or out of step, and it almost helps you see what's in need of healing, and because it takes away the judgment of good and bad. So after that very long setup, Sovereign, please sing to us about Syntropy.
Oh, yay. I love listening to the free-flowing expression that comes through, and your mind song, as I call it, is so coherent with mine. And it's beautiful to tune into what led us here. It's a very syntropic way that I've come to orientate myself. And then people say, well, what is this word then? Well, without wanting to kind of go into the field of what Syntropy isn't, for many people that are totally new to it, they will be able to identify very easily what entropy and entropic orientation is, which is kind of like the opposite of what Syntropy is. Syntropy is a life-bearing, life-generating, and self-perpetuating energetic field that permeates all living life. It is the strategy of life. And because it hasn't been taught in school or in any other place where we find our information sources provided through the public education system, it is very uncommon to pick up a clear definition, as you said. And so this is what I've been honing in on over the past 5-6 years now, really deepening my craft in finding the language to articulate how Syntropy functions, what it is, how it can come to become visible in the external world. And a lot of that has to do with an open willingness to become curious. Syntropy is a way of thinking about life. It's on the channel that I have created, where I share most of my musings, so to speak. I called it Brave New Life Ways. And that's what syntropic relating to life really is all about. It's a life way, it's an orientation in how we relate to reality, ourselves, our feelings, people, nature, whatever is going down in the world. It is based in the foundational teachings of syntropic agroforestry, which is the study of nature. And I am one of the unique humans that has had for a very long time a predisposition to be very orientated towards human ecology, community. I used to call myself a social permaculturist, not so much one in the garden, but one that really wanted to figure out how do we this societal world is a mess. What are the solutions and what are the ways that we can reconstitute, recalibrate, reharmonize communal ways of collaborating and working together? And when I studied syntropic agroforestry with this kind of social predisposition, or the lens I already was looking at life through and the questions I had about it, I got all the answers that I wanted, because I took syntropic agroforestry and put it right over human ecology. And the reason I was able to do that is because of the teachers that so peacefully and so openly and so freely posed beautiful questions to my mind that my mind had never considered. And once that consideration got stepped into by myself, it kind of just allowed me to see the world in a whole different way that allows me to be at ease, and it allows me to become informed by what life is doing, not what I project onto it, but allowing life to inform me what its function is, whether that is for me or whether that is for a larger collective. It's brought a lot of peace to my world. So Syntropy is a vast realm if we haven't ever heard of it before, and it's not something that I can give to you in a little package. This
Right.
is the definition, because it has everything to do with how we perceive life. And I'm looking very much forward in doing what I can to contribute to your sharing of it, because I have found so much homecoming and so much resolve within myself, so many answers, so many things just all of a sudden made sense that never made sense. And so that is Syntropy for me in an abbreviated nutshell.
Oh, love it. You see what I mean, guys? So so I and and the fact that you just said you were able to answer things for yourself. I love that, because I just don't hear enough of that in um in the way that, as you said, our society has been constructed. And I say our society, but I'm specifically speaking to, I can really only speak to where I've come from, and you and I come from, we have some commonalities, but we have very different experiences and backgrounds. Like I came from, I always call myself like the accidental hippie, because I'm super crunchy. If you look at what that's the kind of the terminology that's that's used. I think people are used to seeing me this way for the last several years. But where I came from, I mean, I'm from Long Island, New York. I live in Jupiter, Florida. It's a suburb and it's beautiful. I live in this beautiful area, and but we live in this very kind of happy, um, carved out, manicured lifestyle. And that boat has really been rocked the last 2 years. And while it's, it can be, devastating for some and frightening, I have to tell you, after learning about Centropia, I'm so thankful that this boat was rocked for me, because I had to get out of my comfort zone. I was kind of shaken out of it and invited to be curious about life, about nature. I mean, what I'm doing today, the stuff with the soil. I mean, and for anybody who watches this who doesn't know me, I'll share more. But I've become so passionate about learning more about soil and about nature and about the beauty and the complexity in it. And really the simplicity of it, because I've lived in the complicated human, I lived in New York City. I went to college in New York City. I've been a city mouse for the majority of my life, and everything was complicated. Everything was just mind stories and stress and compelling myself and contracting myself to do things and living by force, and not understanding really this inner yearning that my heart was calling me to, which was living by freedom. And Syntropy really gave me permission to really step into and to feel what love really is, what freedom really is, what flow really is. And I am going to be really taking everything that I encounter in my suburban life, and I'm going to run it through that lens of Syntropy. And some things are just not going to fit, and rightfully so, as I see it. So I'm super excited, and I don't know exactly the topic I'm going to tackle next. I have a bunch of them, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it out there on my social media channels. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm going to put it out there to see what you guys want to hear about first, because I'm going to tackle it all. I will get to it all. And I'm going to invite you here, Sovereign, to join me as often as possible. But I'm definitely also just going to be kind of riffing here on my own. I just already told my husband I'm getting him on here because he's such an interesting guy. He's such a supporter, and his inner drive is connected with Syntropy, but he is such a skeptic on the outside. And it's so beautiful to see somebody like that find their way back home to this love-based perspective. So, but I think that this is a good place to kind of wrap up. And I do want to share about, quick question though, before we go. So A Course in Miracles, I'm not fully familiar with what that is, but I am obsessed with Dr. David Hawkins. I love a lot of his books. And I know that was, for anyone who doesn't know, Dr. David Hawkins is most known for writing the book Power versus Force, but he also has this book, Letting Go, I think it's The Pathway to Surrender, or The Art of Surrender. I think I've read everything that he's ever written and listened to his lectures, but he is just, or was, this really beautiful visionary. But I think his whole spiritual path started much later in life, and it was after taking A Course in Miracles. So I have never asked you this, Sovereign. So that was obviously intentional in your logo to cross out miracles. Where'd that come from?
Yes, totally. Somebody once gave me the book, The Course in Miracles, and I've grappled with Syntropy, the study of Syntropy and human ecology, and studying Centropic Agroforestry for 4 years, pretty much in silence. I used a blog, but I wasn't getting myself out there because I knew I had to find myself in here first. I had to come home to some essential truth, some essential essence, a foundation in which I would feel free and not feel to be something in the world. Because I found that in my observation and the understanding of the hero's journey that each individual is on, there's just so much in Syntropy that is there. Anyways, everything in life's performing a function with purpose. So I find this attraction to a something. And then all of a sudden, I want to become a facilitator to teach this something to other people. And in the process, I lose what my inner being, my inner voice was actually calling for, because what it wanted to have become discovered from within me. And so I was aware that I needed to really sit with this before I would step out and I would go and become a voice for Syntropy in the world, because I didn't want to launch another course. I didn't want to launch another 2-step program and another. This is a life way. It's a way of relating to life that is not something that you can get out of a weekend submersion.
Right.
You can't become a facilitator of this.
Yeah.
And so I was given this book, Course in Miracles, years ago. And through my study of Syntropy and having also sat in nature in the remote bush for a prolonged period of time, spent a year and a half in the remote islands of Vanuatu. There, I kind of pulled myself together and pulled all of my inner findings together and started writing more coherently. And when it became time to get my humility up and get my ego down to, gosh, how do I get this out to the world other than doing a course, right? And so I was having this inner struggle because I didn't want it to be another course in miracles, another course in, and so another course in whatever somebody else comes up with that is new and branded with some new language. And now you have to learn the language in order to understand what he's even saying. And so you have to become
level 1, level 2, level 3.
You have to become part of the cult and initiated in order to, it's how traditional formats work. And I understand that realm as a conscious media, both analyst and creator for 15 years, very, very well, the whole conscious marketing and the unconscious marketing. So I was very struck, how do I bridge this gap? And I never found the Course in Miracles for me to speak to what I needed at the time. And when I chose to put branding on my course in Syntropy, I intentionally chose to cross out miracles, because miracles actually aren't miracles. They are simply the syntropic nature of life. And all that has ever happened is that we have been clouded in our ability to perceive the full reality of the magnificence, the simplicity, the effortlessness, the abundance, and the availability of from the earth up into the metaphysical reality of quote unquote consciousness and energy. The syntropic signatures and the strategies operate throughout all those stratas, whether it's in the soil, whether it's through the trees, whether it's in the macro ecosystem of an entire forest, whether it's in our human communities or societies at large. The syntropic nature of life orchestrates itself through it. And I found that by being willing to look at the world with new eyes and get my mind renewed so that my mind gardens could become cultivated with a perspective that is actually based on what life is doing on all these different subtle levels and layers of reality, it allowed me to recognize that this Course in Miracles isn't actually real. It is a course in the syntropic nature in life, and they leaned into that, but they never put words on any of it because they made it as if it's miraculous.
Yeah.
And miracles are here every day, and I witness them every day through the subtle fields of attunement that I have returned to. There's nothing new that I learned. There's nothing new that I intellectually came to comprehend. There's nothing new in terms of ideologies or a philosophy that I have kind of adopted. All that I've really done is let go of all sorts of stories and reconsidering all those stories. Were they really true? Are they actually? And this syntropic lens has been my one tool to measure whether the stories that I was told, have been basing my life on, were actually part of the reality that life operates on. And if it doesn't, well, then it's very easy to let go of it, because Syntropy offers what is beyond that, what's underneath that, and what actually exists all around those limited narratives of limited perspectives about right, wrong, good, bad. And so for me, the real Course in Miracles is a course in Syntropy, not so much the one that I have done, but the course. And this is, again, I'm such a language nerd, so to speak.
I love when you do this. Yeah.
When we talk about a course, we're talking about a stream. what does water do? It courses through a river. And so a course is not some concept that you take. It is a journey that you get to embark on, and it allows you to travel through your own inner world into greater expanses of awareness, which was already there within. It's just that I have found a vehicle and a roadmap based on nature's principles and strategies that allows for that remembering from within, those innate knowings and that innate wisdom to simply be retrieved. And that's just beautiful. And that one could say is miraculous, but it was always already there. It just got piled up with a
Didn't
whole
see it.
bunch.
It was covered up.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, on that note, we're using the lens of Syntropy, and we're coursing through, we're streaming through, we're flowing through every topic that comes up in this amazing life, as this amazing opportunity that we have. And I'm going to be tackling illness, pain, education, government, rules, all of it. And I will definitely post more about it. For anyone who doesn't know me yet, hi, welcome. And who's, either watching this video now or as a recording, the way that let's stay connected. I would love to stay connected with you as we travel through this journey, as we carve these syntropic streams. And you can connect with me here on this is on my YouTube channel right now, and on Facebook, and then Instagram, which is just marissa.lavin, Lavin. Perfect. Look at that. Miracle right there. And then also my website is marissalavin.com, and that is where I am going to be sharing. I'm not going to be quiet. I've been very quiet and introspective and on my own journey. And then you had just put up that beautiful, the Centropia Agroforestry Research Institute, which is absolutely beautiful. And I would love to get on here and talk about agroforestry with you. And then, of course, education, because in Soul to Soil, my education program, we play Syntropy Says. We filter everything through Syntropy, and I have to tell you, the children soak it up, and it's like as if it's just their default mode. They understand it, they connect with it, and it's so beautiful. So thank you so much for everyone who joined us tonight, and in the morning if you're on the other side of the world. And thank you so much, Sovereign, for this. He gave me a boost, you guys. I was really halting. I was stopping my own flow, and he helped me just flow this right out. So there's more to come, and I feel very blessed. So in Syntropy and in love, thank you so much, everyone.